Hi everyone! So I'm back with another sew along. I don't know if I'm going to film a formal intro to it because my face is really messed up right now. So I have this new pattern. This is a shirt. This is Simplicity 8297. So I'm going to a con at the end of July and I wanted something a little bit more simple than the things that I normally wear, so I'm going to go as Leah from Stardew Valley. My hair will be red by then. Or half of it will. So I'm looking for her crop top. So I could go the easy way and just find a button down and dye it and cut it off. But I've kind of been in the mindset of I want to try to make shirts so that when I find really fun, stupid patterns, I can just make a shirt out of it. So I picked this up and I thought this would be a fun kind of test drive to learn what I'm doing and figure out how to do everything before I get the actual nice fabric for it. So what I'm probably going to do is I'm thinking I'm going to do, if I can get this to focus, I'm thinking I'm going to do this shirt, the D shirt, but since it's a crop top, I think I'm just going to cut it off right there. I'm not going to do this bottom ruffly bit. So I'm going to try that and see what happens. So this is the fabric that I have. So I have two rayons here. I think they're from the same collection. I needed 2 yards for the shirt, but I got these in remnants, so I have exactly 1 yard of this and then probably about 2 inches shy of 1 yard of this. So I'm going to try to make as much of it out of this as I can and then use this as the accents. So probably at least for the yoke and the contrasting sleeve thing. So I also got some blue thread because I don't think I have any of that color anymore, and I also got these buttons. They're kind of white with a little blue shift. So I got 5. The pattern said I needed 6, but since I'm not doing like the bottom 1 or 2 buttons, I think 5 will be fine. So also the main reason I'm doing a test run of this is so I can finally learn how to use all the buttonhole settings on my machine. I know I have a foot for it, but it'll be a little bit of a learning curve for sure. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find all of the pattern pieces that I need real quick, cut those out, and then cut out as much as I can of this fabric. Just wanted to pop on real quick and just illustrate the importance of pre-washing your fabric, which I'm glad I actually did this time, because when I bought this, this was a perfectly even piece of fabric, and it's even on that end, but not on this end anymore. So always pre-wash your fabric so that if it's going to shrink and distort anymore, it's going to do it before you make and wear and wash your garment again. Alright, so I have all of my pieces cut out. I don't have interfacing because I didn't see that on the instructions or on the back of the pattern. It is there, but I just didn't see it when I was looking at stuff on it. So I don't have that, and all of the interfacing I have is like super mega heavyweight, and I don't think it'll look good if I add it to how light this fabric is, so I'm just gonna ignore it and just make a note when I do the actual thing. So the first thing I'm gonna do a couple of steps at a time, just so this video isn't 3 hours long. So the first step is to stay stitch the front. So I'm just gonna do that really quickly along here. This is the front. It's really hard to see, sorry, but this is the front, so I'm gonna stay stitch along there. I'm also going to sew the darts and press those under. View D doesn't have the pocket, but I figured it'd be really easy to add, and I like having a pocket, so I'm adding a pocket, so I'm gonna take care of all of that. And then I'm going to do this part on the back with the yoke, so I'm going to make this pleat on the, oh wait, never mind, that's not for this view. So I'll get those 2 steps done and come back. So another thing that I did notice is that the fabric, or the pattern has, I don't think it's on any of these pieces, it's on a different piece in the tissue paper, is that it has about 5.5 inches worth of ease. So I know this is going to be enormous, so this will let me know what's a better pattern to cut this out on later when I do the real thing. So I will do that stitching and do everything else according to the directions, and I will report back. Okay, so here I have it from the wrong side, what the dart pressed looks like, and I have my stay stitch up here, and that's how it looks from the outside, same thing. So I had no idea what the directions were trying to get me to do from the pocket. I had a terrible migraine yesterday, so my brain is not working at 100%. So what I did was I just decided to turn all of these edges under twice because this fabric did fray really, really badly in the wash, so I want no raw edges visible. So I turned this top edge down first, then I did these two sides, then I did these two corners, and I rolled those under once. And then I did it the second time, starting from these two corners, then the two sides, and then this one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch the top across, and then I'm going to attach this to the left. Yeah, let's go ahead and do the left side front, and I'm just gonna sew it directly on over these 4 edges over here. So I'm going to do that, and I'm sure on views A and C where there's supposed to be pockets there are marked points where the pockets are supposed to be. I'm not gonna dig those out to try to find them, so I'm just gonna wing it. Alright, so I have my pocket sewn on. I went ahead and did a test fit with my phone. My phone fits, but to be honest, I'm not entirely sure if I trust the strength of the fabric to be able to hold up my phone. I'm going to try to zoom in so that you can see it, and hopefully you can see it, but I actually did a second row of stitching closer to the inside of the pocket. I was worried that if I just did the stitching on the outside, I might not catch all of the raw edges in there and it might try to unravel a little bit. So I just went ahead and did this stitching to lock everything in place so that hopefully it will never unravel, even if I do later machine wash this shirt. Alright, so right now I have the yoke and I have the back. So what the instructions say to do next is to stay stitch from here to the center on the yoke, so I am going to go ahead and do that, and then it says to attach the yoke to the back. I am going to do that and all of the rest of my seams with a French seam just to hide any raw edges so that hopefully this thing doesn't fray and I can get a couple of washes out of it. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that, and then after that it says to attach the shoulder seams to the front and the back, so I think I'm also going to go ahead and do that using the same French seam. Alright, so here's what I have so far. It's kind of hard to see because my desk is so small, but here's the front. So the instructions did say to go ahead and do the shoulder seams and also the side seams together, so I went ahead and did that. So I have these really nice French seams. So I pressed everything towards the back for consistency. I'm not entirely sure if it's going to make a change in the garment. I'm sure there's a structural reason. So I just flipped it right side out. But like on the underside of this, it says to press the seam up towards the yoke. It doesn't really seem to make much sense to me. It would make more sense to me to press it down so that like when you're sliding it on or you're just wearing it, it just seems like it would be more comfortable for it to go down, but I'm sure there's a structural reason why it goes up, so I just left that as is. So here's what I have so far, and this is going to be my stopping point for the night, because I have to be up kind of early for work, and as much as I would love to stay up until 5 a.m. and finish this like I used to do, I just can't do that because I have to go be a boring adult who has a regular job. So I'm stopping here for the night. I probably won't be able to get to pick this up again for another couple of days, so hopefully I will remember where I left off and where I left you guys off. Alright, so it's been a couple of days since I had a chance to work on this, so I sat down and started working on this again, so you can see it's kind of starting to come together. So what I did was using a rolled hem, I hemmed this edge of this lining piece, the name of which escapes me, and then using a French seam, I attached this to the front. And I gave everything a good press with my iron, so I did that on both sides. I did have to cut the bottom of this off. My new pinking shears came in a couple of days ago, so got to use those. But I had to cut the edge of that off since it was much longer, because this was supposed to go all the way down the shirt and not just stop at this seam. So I think the next thing I'm supposed to do with the directions is I'm supposed to like baste this part down, this part together, and then I'm supposed to tack this onto the shoulder seam. That might not work out perfectly because since I did that rolled hem, I took off probably another 3/8 of an inch extra on the width of these. So I'm gonna have to keep that in mind when I cut out the fabric for the final shirt. I'm also supposed to have interfacing here, but as I explained earlier, I don't have that. So that's what's next, and then after that I'm going to start to work on the collar. So I will report back once I get something done. Okay, so another thing that I did real quick was I did a line of stitching. You can kind of see it in this lighter bit. Just a really, really tiny, narrow line of stitching along the center front. And I also went ahead and stitched the collar along the unnotched edge, and then these kind of curved edges, and then I clipped the corners, and I'm about to turn it right side out and press it. Alright, so it's a new day because last night when I was pinning the collar to the shirt, I realized that since I did those two French seams at the shoulder and at the front, it took a lot of length out of the shirt. So the collar is about probably an inch too long. So while I think about how I'm going to ease that in, I'm actually going to take a break from this section, and I'm just going to jump ahead and start to work on the sleeves. So from what I gather from the instructions is I'm going to basically sew this into a tube. I'm going to do that with a French seam as well, and then I'm going to fold it after it's sewn into the tube, and that's going to be the edge of, or the end of the sleeve, and then the rest of the sleeve just is kind of a generic sleeve. Nothing really too fancy here. Okay, so here I have the sleeve cuffs. This one I went ahead and I basted this raw edge. That raw edge isn't going to be seen at the other, but before I did this one, I just wanted to find this seam. So I went ahead and I did a French seam on here. Pop that out real quick. So I did go ahead and do a French seam on here. I probably didn't need to since this raw edge would have been concealed anyway, but since I needed a French seam on the sleeves over there, I went ahead and did the French seam on this so that the total length would stay the same and I wouldn't take off too much of the sleeves and then have to ease into this, or ease this into the sleeves. So I'm gonna baste the raw edge up here, and then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do a really tiny line of stitching just on the edge to keep this nice and crisp. Alright, so everything is, the cuffs are nice and finished the way that I would like them to. You can see some tiny stitching up here. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to attach the cuffs to the sleeves using, you guessed it, a French seam. Now this is just a little detail that I'm throwing in that I might be putting too much thought into it. But so on the inside of these French seams on the cuffs, I have them pressed in opposite directions. So this one is going this way and then this one is going that way. And I did that so that when I attach these to the sleeves, I have the sleeves both being pressed opposite directions. I don't know right now which one is front and back. I think these are going towards the back, but I could be wrong. But the reason that I did this is so that when I pin the seams together, it's going to be pinned down here, but I'm going to show you up here. So this extra bulk fabric will be going that way on that side of the seam, and this extra fabric will be on this side of the seam, so that way my machine won't have to sew through a total of, you know, 10 layers of fabric or 8 layers of fabric at once. It'll just break it down a little bit. Probably not a big deal, but just something that I'm doing and wanted to point out real quick. Alright, so my sleeves are done and nice and pressed. They're over here. So I'm revisiting the collar, and what I decided to do is I pinned the edge to the ends, and then I made a little dart up here by the shoulder seam, and then I went to the other side and pinned it there, made another dart at the shoulder seam, and then whatever slack was still left over, because I didn't want two huge folds in the shoulder, so I made another one kind of small in the back. So I'm going to sew this. So this is right sides together, yeah, right sides together to the yoke. So the back is getting, yeah, so to the outside, and then afterwards I'm gonna kind of do a fold into the inside. It'll be interesting. I'm not entirely sure how it's gonna work yet, but when I finish it, I'll come back and... Alright, so hi, there's my face. Here's pretty much what I have so far. The collar, I wanted to pop this on and show you real quick. The collar is a mess. Oh, I just noticed that that matches, and I actually really like how that looks. So the collar is an absolute mess, but I think the best way to get around that would be when I make the other shirt to sew most of the bodice together, and then from there look at the pattern pieces and try to match up the original pattern pieces and try to find the collar that matches the most, because having to take in about 2 inches from the collar to match the top, I think that's what kind of messed up the most, because if you, maybe you can see the collar kind of pooches out in the back a little bit. It's not supposed to do that, so after I get everything else finished, I'm probably gonna put it on and just do some hand tacking to try to get that to look not quite so much like a hood, and to make it look more like a collar. I'm sorry, it's really hard to see, but yeah. So that's what I'm working with, and I'm gonna put the sleeves on next, and then after that I'm gonna do buttonholes. Alright, so this is probably gonna be my last check-in before I have a finished shirt. It's been a couple days since I picked it up and worked on it, so I don't remember where I last left off. The collar looks like absolute garbage, but I think I know how to fix that at a later date. Not on this shirt, but on the next one that I make. So the next thing that I had to do was mark the buttonholes, so I've already gone ahead and done that. I just started... It was kind of confusing on where to actually start this, so I assumed it would just start at the top where this seam is, but then if you look on the diagram, there's a buttonhole there and one up there, which would be right about here, but then there's nothing here to mark it, so I'm not entirely sure what happened there, but I also know for a fact that I will never in my life button this top button on the shirt, so I'm just gonna ignore it and pretend it didn't exist. And so I started at that joint right there, the seam right there, and then I'm gonna wind up with 1, 2, 3, 4 buttonholes. I did move this one up probably by about a centimeter because it would have just been right here and I didn't want to have to deal with that. So my machine has an automatic buttonhole setting, so I practiced with a test piece of fabric a minute ago, so it'll just automatically kind of sew a buttonhole for me. So I thought this was going to wind up being one of the hardest things to deal with, but it might actually wind up being one of the easiest. So I'm going to go ahead and get that done right now, and then I will slit those open, and then at a later point in time, probably later tonight, I'll go ahead and stitch on the buttons individually. Those will have to be done by hand. And then give the hem a good iron, because I haven't done that yet. And I just hem this real quick using a rolled hem because no one would have ever seen that coming. So yeah, I'm gonna get that done, and then next time I check in will probably be the finished shirt. And because some of y'all don't believe that I'm cursed, my needle somehow got stuck in my machine. So what was supposed to be the easiest sit back and relaxed part of this entire project is now the biggest headache. So I'm gonna try to fix this and not throw this machine out the window. It just really aggravates me that this is one of the last things that I had to do before this is done, and then this happens. So yeah, that's how my day's going. Alright, so it has been an amount of time since I had to put this down and come back to it. So I'm back to it now. I'm gonna try again with the buttonholes. So I think what happened on this, which one? This one. That got really, maybe it'll focus, really messed up. I think the fabric is just too lightweight and the machine's having trouble moving it around as it needs to. So I'm gonna move past this buttonhole and just try to get the other two done and see what happens. And you know what? If I only wind up with one buttonhole, that's fine, because this one turned out pretty pretty decently well. I'm probably gonna eventually need some fray check if I do more button work. But if I only have one button, so be it. I will finish this blouse today, come hell or high water. I have Angela Clayton on, and hopefully she will send me good vibes, good sewing vibes through the screen. So this machine will not best me. So the good news is I have 3 new well-sewn buttonholes. The bad news is that my machine just kind of randomly decides whichever direction it wants to sew the buttonholes, because at first for this one I positioned the needle here thinking it would go that way to match the first one, but no, the needle decided to go that way. So I said, oh, okay, I must have messed that up. So for this one I positioned the needle here, or I flipped it around so that it would wind up sewing that way, and it didn't. It was, I don't know what happened. All I know is I kept flipping things around and it still didn't work. So I'm just gonna take that as it is. Kind of disappointed that that happened because I actually kind of wanted to wear this shirt relatively frequently or regularly in real life. So I have this one buttonhole that's all the way over here, and then these are on the edge. So I'm gonna sew on the buttons by hand, and then I'll report back. Hi! So nearly a month later, I have finally arrived at the final shirt. So I think like 90% of the problems that I had came from not having interfacing, like the collar kind of flopping down really weird. And when I get some actual usable interfacing in there, I think it'll fix it. And the same issues that I had with the button, I think there just needed more to be more fabric in here. So I know when I make this shirt for real, I'm probably gonna have to add a couple inches of fabric to the bottom, because I really can't raise my arms much without, yeah. So here's the sleeve with a cuff, and here's the sleeve rolled up the way that I'd probably wear it. So yeah, I'd probably add a couple inches to the bottom. Also would want to take this in, but it's really flowy. I like it. I don't know if I'd ever actually wear it in real life, but yeah, that was a journey. Hi everyone! So I'm popping in here at the end just to talk about the shirt and the pattern a little bit more, because I realized I didn't really fully do that. So at the end of the day, I like the pattern. I think it's a good pattern. I think it needs a decent amount of tailoring, and I was just watching some of the footage, and to find out that it had maybe, what, 5.5 inches of ease is kind of ridiculous. That's really excessive, I think. I mean, it's good because you have a lot of room to work and to take in, but I really don't feel like you should have to take in a total of 5 inches to get a properly fitting garment. But to each their own. It's much easier to take in than let out. So something else that I thought was weird was the buttonhole placing. I put everything away and I'm not going to open this can of worms again, but the sheet that has the buttonhole, the really lining, or the buttonhole placement alignment thing, there really wasn't a whole lot of explanation to where to start that and where to place it. Maybe I just didn't get to that point in the directions, because at some point I was just so defeated by this shirt that I couldn't. Finishing this was just a matter of pure stubbornness, and because I couldn't bear to not, after all of the work and all of the hell I went through while making this shirt. So I just had to finish it to prove to myself that I could. Yeah, so the main issue that I had with it that I'm definitely going to keep in mind with when I make the other shirt, if I actually have time to, because since I spent so long making this, I don't know if I'm actually going to have time to make another shirt. So I'll see what happens in the next couple of days. Is since I did the French seams, when I did little notches in the pattern, I have no idea if this is focusing or not, but because I did the French seams, sometimes in the seams there are these notches of raw edges, so I'm not happy with that, and I think from the inside that's really the only unfinished bit. I'm actually really happy with how this looks on the inside, except for those little notches. So I think when I make the other shirt. If I make the other shirt, I'm gonna mark it with either a pencil or a marker pen or just something so that I don't have to deal with those notches. Also, my stitching lines on the collar, I know for a fact my camera is not going to focus on that. Those are really kind of off and weird, but I think I'm chalking that up to all this extra puckering in the back of the collar, which I feel like now I would have much rather left the back as stiff as possible, and I think the interfacing should go on the underside of the collar, and then the top side should flop over, and I think that should be fine. So I don't remember what the instructions said for that because I didn't read the instructions for the interfacing because I didn't have any. Another thing that I thought was kind of weird is the buttonholes go horizontally instead of vertically. I feel like on most of my other button shirts that I bought from the store, the buttonholes go vertically, and the horizontal kind of makes it a little hard to button, but after I did and undid the buttons a couple times, it made it a little bit easier. I'll definitely need fray check because that is already fraying. I feel like the buttonholes or the stitching around the buttonhole is keeping it fine for now, but I will eventually need to fray check that. So yeah, at the end of the day, I like this pattern. I think it's well made. I mean, it's a shirt pattern, so I feel like I learned a lot, and I'll be able to kind of bring that forward and take what I learned and make something really cool. So hopefully I actually get around to it, so stay tuned.